For years, their divorce was explained as a quiet ending to a powerful partnership. But now, a new wave of documents has reopened wounds that never really healed. When Melinda French Gates saw her ex-husband's name resurface in the Jeffrey Epstein files, she didn't react with anger. She reacted with something far heavier: sadness, pain, and memories she thought were long buried. And what she just admitted publicly hints that the truth behind their split may have been darker than anyone realized. The moment those files dropped, everything changed. Thousands of pages tied to Jeffrey Epstein were suddenly made public, pulling powerful names back into a story the world refuses to forget. Politicians, celebrities, billionaires, some mentioned in passing, others more directly. And while being named doesn't mean wrongdoing, the internet doesn't wait for nuance. Once a name appears, the damage often starts instantly. What made this release hit harder was timing. Years after Epstein's downfall, years after many believed the story was finished, these documents reopened conversations people were desperate to move on from. Old rumors resurfaced, screenshots spread, speculation exploded. And among all the reactions, one response stood out, not from the people named, but from someone who lived closest to one of them. Because this wasn't just about headlines or public curiosity anymore. For Melinda French Gates, this was personal. And as she would soon admit, it dragged her back to one of the most painful chapters of her life. But the moment Bill Gates's name appeared, the story took a very different turn. Bill Gates's name didn't appear with charges or accusations, but it didn't need to. In the Epstein files, even a mention carries weight. Reports say the documents reference past interactions between Gates and Epstein, including emails and claims that Epstein himself allegedly made. Gates has firmly denied those claims, calling some of them absolutely absurd, and his team insists there was no wrongdoing. Still, the damage wasn't about legality, it was about association. Epstein's name has become radioactive, and anyone linked to him, even indirectly, gets pulled into the same storm. Gates later admitted he regretted ever spending time with Epstein, saying those meetings were limited and a mistake he wishes he could take back. No island visits, no hidden trips, just dinners, according to him. But once those files became public, facts and rumors blurred together fast. Online, speculation ran ahead of confirmation, and while Gates was issuing statements and clarifications, someone else was processing the fallout in a very different way. Because for Melinda French Gates, this wasn't a public relations issue, it was a reminder of something she had already lived through. And what she revealed next made it clear this story was never just about documents. When Melinda French Gates finally spoke about it, her words were calm but heavy. She said seeing her ex-husband's name in those files brought back very, very painful times from their marriage. Not anger, not shock, just sadness. The kind that lingers long after everything is supposedly over. She described feeling an unbelievable sadness, making it clear this wasn't new pain, it was old pain resurfacing. She didn't accuse, she didn't speculate. Instead, she drew a clear line. Whatever questions remain, she said, are for those people to answer, even her ex-husband, not her. And then came the line that quietly said everything. She was relieved to be away from all the muck. To a lot of people, that sounded like closure, but to others, it felt like confirmation that the cracks in their marriage had been there long before the divorce became public. And suddenly, the timeline people thought they understood didn't feel so simple anymore. Because this reaction didn't come from nowhere. It came from years of tension that had stayed mostly behind closed doors. And once you look back at what happened before their split, the picture changes completely. Before the divorce shocked the world, there were already signs that something wasn't right. Reports later revealed that Melinda had been deeply uncomfortable with Bill Gates' past association with Epstein long before the split was announced. This wasn't a sudden realization, it was an ongoing concern that weighed on the marriage for years. Friends close to the couple would later say the issue created tension that never fully disappeared. And when the separation finally became public, after 27 years together, the timing raised eyebrows. Not long after, Gates acknowledged having an affair with a Microsoft employee years earlier. The revelation added another layer to an already complicated picture. To many, it explained why Melinda's response now feels less like surprise and more like exhaustion. This wasn't just about one mistake or one name in a document. It was about trust, slowly eroding behind closed doors, while the public saw a polished partnership built on philanthropy and power. And once that trust cracks at that level, it rarely comes back the same. But even with all of this resurfacing, Melinda chose to shift the focus somewhere else entirely, because for her, the story was bigger than a marriage or a divorce. Despite the personal pain, Melinda French Gates didn't let the story stay confined to her own life. She repeatedly emphasized that the bigger issue was accountability, especially for those affected by Epstein. She spoke about the victims, the unanswered questions, and the responsibility of powerful people to respond when their names appear in such a toxic network. It brings back memories of very painful times, she said, but she also made it clear that the focus shouldn't be on her. Whatever remains unclear in the files, she explained, isn't hers to answer. Those questions are for the people involved, including her ex-husband, to face. In her words, stepping away from the muck allowed her to maintain perspective, to separate her own life from the scandal and keep the conversation where it should be, on accountability and truth. By framing it this way, Melinda transformed what could have been a personal headline into a larger story about responsibility, ethics, and the shadow Epstein cast over the world's most powerful circles. And yet, even with all of this resurfacing, the emotional weight of her own experience never fully disappears. Because the public may see headlines, but she lives with the echoes of those painful times every day. Bill Gates, for his part, spoke out cautiously but firmly. In an interview, he admitted that every minute spent with Epstein was a mistake he deeply regretted. He stressed that his interactions were limited to dinners and denied ever visiting Epstein's island. When it came to the more sensational claims, like alleged personal health issues mentioned in the files, his spokesperson called them absolutely absurd. Despite the denials, the public response has been intense. Social media buzzed with speculation, and news outlets dissected every email and document that carried his name. Gates's attempts to clarify didn't stop the narrative from spreading, showing just how difficult it is for anyone connected, even tangentially, to Epstein to escape scrutiny. Yet even as Gates addressed the claims, Melinda remained focused on a different truth: the emotional fallout of these revelations. She didn't aim to publicly refute or defend. Instead, she highlighted the unresolved questions, the need for answers, and the importance of separating fact from rumor. Her stance reminded the world that some of the most significant stories aren't about what's written in a file, they're about the human consequences that follow. And even as denials circulate and documents are dissected, the echoes of those painful times continue to shape both their lives. Even with denials and clarifications, many questions remain unanswered. What really happened behind the closed doors of one of the world's most high-profile marriages? How much did Epstein's shadow influence decisions, relationships, and trust within that household? And more broadly, what responsibility do powerful people have when their names surface in a network that caused so much pain? Melinda made it clear she isn't the one to answer these questions. She placed the responsibility squarely on those involved, including her ex-husband, signaling that accountability isn't just personal, it's public. For viewers, this leaves a tense curiosity hanging in the air. The story isn't neatly resolved, and some of the most critical answers may never be fully revealed. It's a reminder that even when lives appear glamorous and untouchable from the outside, private struggles, regrets, and painful truths can ripple for years. And sometimes the most powerful revelations aren't found in the documents themselves, but in the reactions they provoke. And for Melinda, those reactions are a reminder that moving on doesn't erase the past, it only changes how you face it. In the end, this story isn't just about names on a page or unverified claims in leaked documents. It's about the human cost of power, secrecy, and broken trust. Melinda French Gates' words remind us that even the wealthiest and most influential people aren't immune to pain, heartbreak, and the long shadows cast by the choices of those around them. The Epstein files may continue to surface more names and claims, but the most powerful moments are often the ones that show vulnerability, honesty, and the courage to step away from toxicity. Melinda's response highlights that moving forward isn't about rewriting history, it's about reclaiming your own life and insisting that others answer for theirs. And as the public pores over the documents and rumors swirl online, her message is clear. Some stories aren't just headlines, they're a reminder of the lasting impact of choices, the importance of accountability, and the truths that remain hidden behind even the most polished facades. Because while the files may be closed, the echoes of those painful times will linger far longer than anyone expected. Looking back, the Gates story shows how complex and fragile even the most high-profile lives can be. Millions saw them as a perfect partnership, a billionaire couple building empires and giving billions to charity. But behind closed doors, decisions, regrets, and painful experiences shaped a marriage that the public only ever glimpsed in fragments. Melinda's honesty, her sadness, her restraint, her insistence that others answer for themselves offers a rare glimpse into the personal cost of global power. It's a reminder that wealth and influence don't shield anyone from heartbreak, scrutiny, or moral reckoning. And for viewers, the story leaves a lingering question. How much of what we see in the public eye reflects reality, and how much is carefully edited for perception? In the end, the documents may reveal names, emails, and claims, but the human stories, the regrets, the lessons, the painful truths are what remain etched long after the headlines fade. Because some revelations don't just make news, they make you think about the people behind the stories and the echoes of the choices they made.